So, what the heck is Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia? Well, besides being a mouthful, it's a mobile game set in the Dissidia Final Fantasy universe. Dissidia is kind of like Final Fantasy Smash Brothers. It's really just an excuse to have your favorite characters interacting with each other in a pretty much consequence-free environment. You've got Sabin, Snow, and Zell all palling around trying to get Lise to tell them how to channel chakra. You've got Cypher and Zack getting into essentially a training off to see who can do the most squats. You've got Squall, Cloud, and Noctis kind of sitting in a corner trying to have a stoic contest. You get the idea. The major entries in the franchise before this were the PSP games Dissidia and Dissidia Duodecim, and the arcade/PS4 fighter Dissidia NT. The PSP games both told the story of the goddess Materia and the god Chaos pulling warriors from around time and space to fight for dominance. If you're familiar with comics, it was basically Final Fantasy Secret Wars. Materia pulls the main protagonists from each game, or at least as close as she could get. She pulls Terra to represent Final Fantasy VI, for example. And Chaos pulls essentially the face villains from the same titles. That's why you have characters like Golbez and Kuja and Jecht in his human form, and not the actual final bosses of those titles present. Dissidia NT tells the story of what happens when you make a fighter with no story and eventually port it to consoles. The Opera Omnia story is actually pretty close to the original Dissidia's. This time, Materia and Chaos jointly create a world in which their fighters can rest in between unspecified conflicts. This, of course, goes horribly wrong as a third party moves in to corrupt the new world and take over. From there, it's up to the heroes, villains, and anti-heroes to fix things and get back to their worlds. Complicating matters, however, is the fact that while each character is taken from the end of their story, whether that be the end of the game or simply when that character died, Materia's warriors do not always remember their lives and abilities up to that point. Some examples include Yuna as a summoner. Terra does not have her Esper form. Lightning does not have her Knight of Etro abilities. Cecil is still a Dark Knight at the beginning of the game. And once again, mature Hope is inside of young Hope's body. That doesn't sound right. Moving on. The story is broken up into two acts containing multiple chapters each. Act 1 is the initial story that the game launched with, while Act 2 is a still ongoing follow-up after the climactic battle that takes place there. Tied in with the story chapters are character events and lost chapters, where new warriors are summoned from their games to the world, where they get a few cutscenes of them interacting with the main cast. This is the main method by which the developers introduce new units into the game. When there's a new chapter update for Act 2, there's typically one or two new characters that are tied into its story as well, the latest of which being one General Leo. Overall, it's very impressive the amount of attention they put into making an actually coherent story for this mobile game. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out the one glaring fault with it: the villains. You can recruit the villains to your roster, and the game makes story chapters and lost chapters explaining that as well. But for some of these characters, it is obvious that they are there because this is a video game. Characters like Jecht, Cypher, Leo, Golbez, Gilgamesh, Vayne, these characters all have understandable motivations, and they also have character arcs, and at the end of them, you could actually see them wanting to work with the heroes and vice versa. The same cannot be said, however, of characters like Kefka, the Emperor, Cloud of Darkness, Sephiroth, Exdeath, and Ultimecia. In fact, some of them are barely even really characters and are really just expressions of nihilistic destruction. Before I get into gameplay, I just want to preface by saying that this is a very high-level overview of how this game works. There are a lot of interlocking systems at play that I could talk about, but I don't want the video to be that long. The central mechanic shared by all Dissidia games is the Brave/HP system. In it, characters have two running totals for the titular stats, with Brave attacks siphoning points back and forth between you and your opponent, and HP attacks dealing actual damage based on your current Brave level. Opera Omnia is the first Dissidia to be a more traditional turn-based affair with 3 characters from your roster and a turn track that is similar to Final Fantasy X. Where things get interesting is in the concept of Brave Breaking. If any unit's bravery is reduced below 0, they are immediately broken, which pushes their next turn back 1 slot on the turn track, and they enter into what is known as the broken state. While in this state, brave hits will crit more easily both for the unit and for any unit that is attacking them. To help out with all of this, each character has 2 special abilities, an assist ability and a powerful EX ability. The 2 special abilities vary wildly from character to character. Some are heals, others are attacks, a couple others are actually buffs or debuffs. One plucky ninja even has an ability that allows her to actually steal an enemy's buffs for herself or give them her debuffs. The list goes on. The assist abilities are a little bit more uniform in that they don't cost a turn, and they tend to either buff the party in some way or make one of the character's special abilities perform additional actions. The EX abilities, which are the current top game abilities, are basically the game's 1.0 version of limit breaks. Post Final Fantasy VI cast even have some of their actual limit breaks from the source material. You also have a friend unit that you can borrow for a single fight. A lot of people use these to get around difficult encounters by bringing in their level cap max stat friend. And you also have a summon monster, which in addition to providing just a passive bonus to your units, when summoned onto the field, will actually upset the turn order by giving all of your units the next 5 turns uninterrupted. Now we get to the mobile part of this mobile game, the gacha mechanic. Now, unlike a lot of other gacha games that I play, the characters are not actually what are locked behind the mechanic. In fact, getting characters in this game is actually super easy. What characters you don't get just by playing through the Act 1, Act 2 stories, you get by playing the opening combat sections of the various events/lost chapters. And all of those are level 10. The level cap was 50 at the start, and it's currently at level 70, so you can just blow through those. This game wants you to have all of the units. The gacha comes in with the weapons, though. You open this game's version of loot boxes in the hopes of getting the 3 major weapons for the characters that you want. In quick summary, each character's weapon has a unique passive that is associated with it that only operates when equipped. You can, however, extract that passive from the weapon by getting 4 copies of it and merging them all together. The goal is to get the EX weapon at max level to unlock the character's EX ability and to use the other 2 weapon passives in order to enhance combat with it. Now, like most gacha games, there's an in-game currency that you can either earn or pay a crazy markup of real dollars for to open the loot boxes, which have a higher drop rate for the better weapons. But as per usual, I have yet to find an agreeable deal in the store for that currency. The far more tempting offers in my book are actually the custom costumes that they offer for certain characters. You have Knight of Etro Lightning, Possessed Vayne, Heaven's Word Ishtola, somehow even less dressed Fran. That last one is a community favorite. Can you guess why? So, with all that said, what's the appeal? Honestly, it's the surprising amount of care and attention that is paid to this game and how it works. The story is an actual story. Yes, it's mostly an excuse to have Sid, Setzer, Zaz, and Balthier all bagging on Vaughn for not being able to fly. But there are a lot of really good character interactions and scenes that go into this game. A lot of characters get to say goodbyes that they never got to in their home games. Others get to see themselves and their friends in a new light. Perhaps the biggest example of this is the presence of Class Zero. If you're unfamiliar, the characters of Final Fantasy Type 0 are a class made up of playing cards, Ace, King, Deuce, Sace, etc., that come from a world where if you die, everyone's memories of you are erased. And their interactions with other characters who are actually able to remember dead loved ones are great. It's very clear that the writers of Opera Omnia were super into typo. Then there's the gacha part of the game. This is usually where I lose interest in mobile games, but what they've done here feels very manageable. There's a steady rotation of availability. There are stores to actually buy some of these items if your luck has actually been bad. It's very clear exactly what you want to pull for, and probably due to legal requirements in certain countries, the game tells you the exact drop chances for everything. that you're pulling. It's a complete random fest, but it's one where I can collect my resources and I can plan things out and know exactly what I can get, even in worst luck scenarios. And here is the best part in my book. Nothing fun or important is behind an energy system. Yeah, you can play the entire story without stopping if you wanted to. It's really long, so I wouldn't recommend that. And any event or lost chapter is free to be played as long as you want. There is an energy system for some of the game modes, but those are only for endgame powering up, and said powering up is noticeable but not entirely critical. And you of course have items that you can use to keep it going, but these items are not directly available for any real money. And lastly, there's the time investment side. There's a lot in this game to do at pretty much any point. It, of course, has the obligatory daily quest items, but those are so easy to meet that I often just blow through them in less than 5 minutes while trying to actually make progress. And it's not often that I find a game that can balance playing as much or as little as you want for all levels of play, from beginner to endgame hardcore raider. This one, however, does a really, really good job of it without just turning into a money vampire. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go farm gems so I'm ready for Gladio so I can complete my FF15 road trip crew. Thanks for watching.